Yeah, so this is the reprise. We tried this last week, had technical difficulties, had a wonderful conversation for an hour, and then realized that none of it got recorded. So this is John Bachman. You'll see in the smart black coat there, and he's my brother, and I'm Dan Bachman, and we're here to talk about things. And in particular, this is probably going to be a multi-part conversation, as you and I have discussed, John.
It's already a multi-part conversation because
It
the first
already
one didn't
is. It's
record.
just hasn't been recorded all the parts yet. Yeah. So we're talking about God. So we're trying to address challenging topics, thorny topics, whatever, controversial topics. And John, you're a deist. Was that accurate?
I'm a theist. I'm a Christian
I'm
theist.
sorry, a theist. A
Yeah,
theist.
yeah.
Yes.
hmm
So you believe in a God. I'm
Yeah.
agnostic. So we figured, hey, let's talk about our beliefs and
You
see.
can read minds.
Yes.
Zoolander reference. Of course you got it, but maybe anybody who
Yes,
doesn't.
yes. So we figured we'd kind of hash through what we believe and why we believe it, and we figured this episode should be about defining God, because if we don't know what we're defining, or if it's not clear who we're saying we believe in or don't believe in, then anything that follows is going to be nonsensical, because we're talking about an undefined thing. So, and of course, that's a tricky thing to define, would be God. Um, or we'll just say there. Let me say this one last thing. I personally believe, and I think you feel the same, John, that there are thoughtful, intelligent, well-intentioned, good people who are on exact opposites of this conversation, and everything in between.
Yeah.
So I feel certain that neither of us feel judgmental of people who don't share our beliefs.
They're just wrong. That's all.
They're just wrong. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, we whoever the we is talking, we always. Oh, we've got it figured out.
Right.
Excuse me. I'm going to try not to cough too much in this. So today we'll start by talking about our definitions of God, and just a little background. I mean, there are, I don't know, hundreds of gods believed in around the world. Probably hundreds of religions, maybe thousands. I don't know. So I'll let you start, John, since you have beliefs. How would you define your God?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I would define God. It's I feel like I'm cheating because we already discussed this last week.
Yes.
I think the big picture that I'll start with this time is kind of what we kind of stumbled on at the end last time, and that is whatever else can be said of the God I worship or the God I believe in, is that He, and I'll call Him He, is worthy of worship. And worship. It means that I hold Him as sacred, as being worthy of emulation, adoration, obedience, and I hold him as the ultimate example of everything that I wish to be.
Okay. I'm taking notes here just so that I don't miss any of these.
Yeah, I've got my own right here.
Oh, good.
From last time. But okay, so understanding that starting with the end in mind, that I view God as ultimately worthy of worship. Now we get into some of the other attributes, some of the specifics. One is outside of time and space, immaterial. So outside of time and space, because I believe that God is creator also. And the only way to get something out of nothing is if you, aka God, are not bound by time and space. There has to be some source of creation that is not within creation. So you have to be outside of what is created in order to create it. Sounds crazy. That includes time, according to what I understand of Big Bang, time and space originated from a singularity, an infinitely small, infinitely dense point, which is to say nothing but everything at the same time. Very confusing. At any rate, the only way I can reconcile that is not a scientific principle. At some point, it becomes philosophical, metaphysical, religious. The only way I can reconcile that is to imagine a creator outside of time and space. So I would also say, clearly, if he can do all that, then he's also powerful. How powerful? Well, traditionally we say he's omnipotent or omnipotent, all powerful, which, anything more powerful than the sum of humanity is effectively all powerful to me. So somewhere up there, a lot of power, a puissance, as the French say. I just stumbled on that word again today. He's also personal, I would say, because if a creator is to make humans, if a creator is responsible for humans, and I would even add animals in there as well, because animals have personality. They have emotions. I believe they have feelings. Then I think that it would be inconceivable to create something that had nothing to do with who I am. Like if I were to create something, a complex computer simulation or something like that, it would be inconceivable that it would have nothing to do with who I am, because it emanates from who I am. Therefore, a God who creates human beings and animals with emotions and feelings is himself possessing of emotions and feelings. Otherwise, it's just completely incongruous to me. I wouldn't know what to make of that. I would also say that to the degree I believe in absolute morality, so like at some things, regardless of what time period or perspective we take, really are good or bad. I think to the degree I believe in that, I also believe that God is the source of that goodness, the standard by which we judge good and bad. I would say because he is, I guess because he's the start of everything, that would also make him what we call necessary. That's kind of a philosophical term. I'm not really too concerned about that, but we could add necessary in there. And I would say, you added last time, like, wouldn't he be omniscient? Wouldn't meaning like he knows everything? Okay, fair enough. Honestly, to be God, you wouldn't have to be all those things. You really would only have to be worthy of worship. And that's sort of a more nebulous term, but I think I've given a few parameters for what I consider, and I'll just summarize. So he's an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial, immensely powerful, personal being with feelings. He's the creator. He's objectively moral. He's a source of objective morality. And I just kind of added on the end there the philosophical term necessary. I don't know what that adds for our conversation. And he knows an awful lot. Some would say omniscient. Again, that's a philosophical sort of a term. Doesn't really concern me. He knows a lot more than I do. For all practical purposes, as far as I'm concerned, he is omniscient. He knows everything. But I'm not really concerned to navigate the ins and outs of the philosophy, stuff like, could God create a rock so heavy he could not lift it? Aha, so he's not omnipotent. I don't care. Is he worthy of worship? Is he pretty powerful? Is he pretty smart? Is he creator? Is he outside of time and space? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, that's very thorough definition. I like that. And I would guess that your definition is shared by a lot of people, or at least very close to it.
Yeah.
I would guess. Let's see. Is there anything I want to ask you about the worthy of worship, outside time and space, creator, all powerful? Emotion has emotions and feelings, is the source of all goodness and objective morality, and uncaused. Does that sound like I got everything there?
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I don't have anything to add to that at this point.
Okay.
Okay. So having said that, what's your sense of when you say you don't know if God exists?
Yeah.
What are you talking? That is how you define your position as an agnostic, right? You don't know if God exists, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So when we say you don't know if God exists, what God? What do you mean by God?
Well, none that I've seen, none that I've met yet.
Okay.
None of the gods that I haven't met yet am I convinced exist.
Okay, and what are this God's qualities?
Well, that's the thing. If I don't see evidence of their existence, then I wouldn't ascribe qualities to them.
So what qualities do you not
So,
see? in these?
quality, you mean they're as these other gods are defined by other people,
Yeah.
you mean?
How would you know if you met? How would you know if you found evidence for God? What kinds of things would you
Oh,
consider to be evidence for God?
yeah. So
Such that you don't see them. If that presumes, like not seeing them presumes that you could see them. If you were,
yes, yes, and of course, I'll answer this, but then we'll turn it right back around on you. So, like, what qualities have you seen that have convinced you that God is? Oh, the other thing I want to ask you before we get too deep in this, John,
yeah, sure.
which God do you believe? Believe it?
Yeah, I believe in the Christian God.
The
As,
Christian God. Okay.
yes, as described in this book right here, actually, right there.
The
Not
Bible.
particular, not particularly the NIV, but some version of that Bible.
Okay. So what would convince me? The short answer is I can't tell you. I don't know. Because and here's which is unsatisfying. But here's why that's an almost unanswerable question for me. It's because we humans have all kinds of experiences that we can't explain. Dreams, visions, hallucinations. I mean, I had hallucinations when I was in the hospital and starving for 2 months. And when my electrolytes get low, I mean, so we all know the inaccuracy of eyewitness accounts. You can have 10 people witness the same exact thing right in front of them in broad daylight and get 10 different descriptions of what happened. It's kind of a remarkable thing in the criminal justice system that because it's a thing you would not expect, but it's also a thing that we know that you can't believe your lying eyes every time. And that's just visual experience, not to mention feelings, emotions. What is an emotion? You know, I mean, that could be a topic for a whole other conversation that we would not resolve, probably. What is an emotion? What is love? What is fear? Where does it reside? We think, oh, it's in my head. Is that where it is? And if so, what does it look like? Can we see it on a scanner? So all these feelings and experiences we have are not entirely trustworthy. I mean, hallucinations are a perfect example. Alzheimer's, dementia, intoxication. You know, DMT is famous for convincing people that they have had an experience with God. And I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying these are known things that happen that give us very convincing evidence that can feel as convincing as anything we've ever seen or experienced, and yet may be completely imaginary. So your question, which is what evidence would I accept? I can't tell you. I mean, what if?
Okay, maybe because we have not adequately defined God in your case. What would?
Well, that's the same question.
I mean, so if you can't define God, and you don't know what evidence would count in favor or against God, presumably, then what are we even talking about?
Is easier. The against is easier because God is a big claim.
But what? But okay, but like, okay, maybe you're saying no. I reject all gods. I don't. There's no evidence in favor of this particular God. Goodness,
I'm
the
not
cause,
convinced.
powerful. Okay, okay.
I won't say there's no evidence. I'll just say that the evidence I've seen has not been persuasive to me.
Okay, and do you view God as an ultimate question, or is it contingent side question? Like, is it my job to convince you, or is it your job to find out?
Oh, that's interesting. I'd never thought of it that way. Well, I mean, ultimately, it's always each of our individual job to determine our own beliefs. In fact, you could argue that we don't choose our beliefs. This is me just brainstorming here, kind of. You could argue that we don't choose our beliefs because a belief is something you're convinced is true. or if we can agree that's what a belief is, we're convinced this thing is true, we can't control. Can we control over what we believe is true? Do we have control over that? I mean, I can't believe that the sun's going to rise tomorrow and then change my mind and then suddenly not believe that. Tomorrow
I think
morning.
maybe not all at once, probably not all at once. You couldn't do it, but you'd be surprised what people can bring themselves to believe in a period of time. And
No, I
especially
agree.
if they are susceptible to it, people can believe practically anything. They can believe the exact opposite of what is actually true. It's
Agree
very possible.
100%.
Yep.
Agree 100%. In fact, I would guess that that might be how a theist who believes in a single God feels about all the other gods,
Or
or
an atheist,
the
how an
people who
atheist feels
believe in
about.
all the other gods.
Sure, an atheist who sees people believing. Yeah, I mean, it's probably similar to both sides. So what we're talking about is like, your question, can we choose to believe? And I think it's almost like someone asked me one time, I was talking with one of our behavioral health officers, and we were sitting out in a field somewhere, army camping, and he said, "Is addiction a choice?" And I said, I thought about it, and I said, no, addiction is a series, a long series of very small choices that we may or may not even apprehend as choices at the time. And then by the time we are addicted, it does not seem that any one choice has ever been made. We have acted out of instinct to get where we are, and so our instincts choose for us. Unless we have a space between stimulus and response, we may never apprehend that we made a single choice ever, and we may be in the depths of addiction.
I agree 100% with that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's I mean, in the example of drugs, you know, I'll use myself as an example. When I was 18, I was a bartender, and back then, people smoked. These days, people don't really smoke. They vape and other stuff. But and I always thought, oh, that's gross. And some of my fellow employees would go back to the break room and take a smoke break, right? And it was just this little hot box behind the kitchen where people would go in there and puff away, and I would take breaks too, but I didn't want to smoke. And then one day I was like, man, what do y'all get out of that? And they say, oh, it just calms you down, man. It's so stressful out there running all those tables.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, let me try that. I took a little puff and I got lightheaded and giddy and warm. And I was like, oh, this is nice. I see what this is about. And I was like, yeah, but it's nasty. It makes your fingers smell and your clothes smell, makes you cough, it gives you cancer. It's like, I see. Okay, I see why people do it. Well, my progression was, oh, I'll just see what that's all about. And then I was convinced I would never smoke, like beyond just trying it. Then, I keep showing up for work. Oh, I bum a puff off someone. Then I'd bum a whole cigarette. And I still remember when I bought my first pack. Bought a pack of cigarettes, and I felt like such a big loser. I was like, as I was buying it, I was like, oh my God, I'm now a smoker. I'm going to be a smoker the rest of my life. How did that happen? Well, it happened just like you said.
Like grandma. Remember grandma? Just the smell of old smoke permeating everything.
So yeah. So I would agree. And also free will kind of comes into this at some point too, which is its own separate topic. And I'm personally the opinion, I'm leaning towards, I'm not convinced. In fact, I won't say I'm really convinced of anything. But I'm leaning towards the idea that we don't actually have free will as we think we do. I think that we respond to stimuli.
Well, that would certainly go along with not choosing our beliefs then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can see this with propaganda. We all know what propaganda is. We know how it works, so it's basically convincing someone over time to adopt a certain belief system or do something, do some task. It's persuasion. It's just persuasion that's generally thought of with a bad direction, right? You can persuade someone to do something good or something bad. Propaganda is generally thought of as having a bad goal or bad for the person who's absorbing it, I guess. But anyway, so free. I don't want to get sidetracked here.
So God for you. So okay. So I thought that we had talked about if God existed, what would
Yes.
you be looking for?
Yes. So my closest. So this is leading to simulation theory, which is what I talked about last time. So there's something called simulation theory, which is basically that we live in a video game. And we're all characters that are highly developed compared to our video games that we have here, obviously. And our reality is kind of manufactured. And I haven't read a book on it or anything. I just know the concept, the basic tenets of it. And that seems, and by the way, I'm not convinced of any of this at all. This is pure speculation, but this is where the direction I'm leaning and have been for a while is, this thing looks like it's the most plausible of the explanations that we cannot know, in my opinion.
But you think none of them are plausible? You just think of all the options, which are all implausible, this one is the most plausible of all the implausible ones.
It's the least smelly of the dirty shirts in your hamper, so it's the one you're going to put on today.
I think last time you put it somewhere around 2%.
So we'll put it somewhere like that.
So, okay, but on some level, do you think that there is something that is 100% likely that actually is? Because if so, then they can't all be hovering around 1 or 2% or less.
Exactly. Yeah. So the closest I can get to God is, or that I think would help this conversation would probably would be for me to say that I don't buy the Big Bang. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think the universe appeared in an instant. I just don't buy the explanation that something came from nothing. And of course, that defies our laws of physics, as far as I know. And yet, we're all here, and presumably, we have not been here forever. If we'd been here forever, that would be a whole other conversation to try to figure out, right? So there's so many little layers to this. So I don't buy the Big Bang, which means I believe in a creator. So I believe in intelligent design, the closest thing I believe in, we'll say. So if I believed anything, it would be in intelligent design and that we are a simulation that is just super realistic to us. Much like a video game character, if they were self-aware, might think that their world they lived in was super realistic to them. And we think, well, I would see pixels on the tree leaves or something. Well, not necessarily. I mean, if we were designed and programmed, we'd only see what we were programmed to see, or only be suspicious of what we were programmed to be suspicious of, or only have beliefs that we were programmed to have. And yet it feels like we make personal decisions all the time, using critical thinking. I think we have critical thinking capacity, but I think I think most of us think that we critically think about the huge majority of our decisions, when in reality, I think critical thinking might be 10% contribution to why we make the decisions we make. Why did I buy a purple shirt? Well, I could say, I like purple's my favorite color. Why is it my favorite color? Where do you go with that? I don't know. Why does it please me in some way? Why did it feel like what I wanted to wear today? So all of these, the free will thing, I don't think we have it. I think we respond to stimuli primarily. I think that's our primary decision-making apparatus. I think that we had a designer But then we get right back to the same problem that you have, which is me describing that designer.
Richard
I
Dawkins
can't
brings
tell
us
you.
up. Dawkins brings us up a lot with regard to theists. He says, "Who created your creator?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, the old joke about, well, what holds the earth in space? Well, there's a turtle on it sitting. Well, what about below? Well, there's another turtle. Well, it's turtles all the way down. Yeah, you just never run out of needing more turtles to support the previous one. So,
How
which is what
plausible do you think that is, by the way, if you don't mind my asking? Because you've assessed the likelihood of a simulation universe being around 2% plausible. Well, then you add to that the turtles all the way down. And is that even mathematically possible? I'm not convinced that it is.
I'm no mathematician, but it seems impossible to me.
Yeah, how would that even play out in reality?
Well, in our reality,
Is there
certainly not
is
possible.
so the fact that you're describing this as a simulation presumes a greater reality.
Yes, it does, which I can tell you nothing about.
I mean, right, not scientifically speaking. This is not a scientific idea. There is literally no way that you could there, okay, you're familiar with Occam's razor, I presume. Whereas you don't multiply entities beyond what is necessary. And so I'm wondering, what does a simulation world, in addition to an actual world universe, get you that just having an actual universe doesn't?
What does a simulated world get you that an actual world wouldn't?
Yeah, okay. So having two entities, a simulated world and an
Yeah.
actual world, the world of your designer, your programmer, and then the world we inhabit, the universe we inhabit, there are now two things. Now, what I'm going to put the right finger down here. I'm only going to put this finger up. Now, what does having two get you that just having one doesn't, in your theory? Because, and I'm using theory in a colloquial sense, not in a scientific sense, because I don't think we would either of us agree that this is a scientific theory that you have.
Oh, this is all speculation as far
Yeah,
as I'm concerned.
yeah. So what does this overlay of a simulation world get you, in addition to an actual overarching world, besides some sort of narrative arc such as Matrix, or Matrix Reloaded? What does it get you that besides some narrative story arc from your
Now,
perspective?
I need to understand what your question. So, are you saying that there is an actual world, and I'm saying that in this actual world and universe, there is also a video game being played that we are characters in?
Yeah, so your programmer presumably inhabits the actual world or an actual world, because we don't know if
Sure.
that designer is actually an inhabitant of a different simulation himself or herself or itself, right?
Right.
So so
I would assume the latter. If I had to bet money, I would assume the latter.
yeah, so infinite complexity here, no
Yes.
end in sight.
Yep.
What does infinite complexity get you that one entity does not?
I don't know. I mean, does it have to get us something?
I mean, it seems to violate what we know of how the world works. Like, why multiply something when there's no obvious reason to?
Oh, why design the video game? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, why believe we're in a video game simulation? Sure, you could answer it that way or ask it that way. Why design a video? Why presume we're in a video game simulation as opposed to the real world, when there's no way of
Well,
knowing, and it doesn't
part of it
seem to get us
is,
anything?
well, yeah, I don't know what it gets us part, but what I'll say is the reason I lean towards simulation theory as opposed to what I can see and touch and feel, right? Which is really the hard things that I feel are not hard. They're mostly space. You know, they're atoms. Atoms are they're mostly nothing
Yeah,
with a few little orbiting, zipping things buzzing around. But you make them small enough and put them close enough together, and things feel real.
Yeah.
Our body feels real because I can touch it, I can see it, I can sit on it. But in fact, if you just zoom in, it's all space and just buzzing. It's buzzing energy. So so that what we think of as real, I would say, is not as real as we would like to think many times, I think. Because we think, oh, well, I see this rock, I can pick it up. That's real. I know it's real because I can feel it, how much it weighs, and I can squeeze it and it doesn't smush, and I can throw it and hear it land. Therefore, it's real. But in fact, it's just a bunch of little, I mean, it's mostly space.
Okay, but okay. Maybe I'll ask it a different way. I agree, 100%. But what does multiplying the universes get you that a single universe does not?
I don't know. Who is the you you're talking about? Is it me?
Yeah,
Like,
because why?
like
Because
what
you're
am I trying to get out of
yeah,
multiple
yeah. I mean, I
universes?
guess what is why assume a simulation? Why assume two universes? The universe a minimum, possibly infinite. Why assume a minimum of two universes when one seems to be adequate, unless you have a reason why one is not adequate?
Well, it's because the alternative explanations I've seen don't hold water as well to me. So what I mean is, if let's say there is a real universe that we live in right now, like all the dirt and stuff, it wasn't programmed, it was actually created, right? Let's assume that. Now, where did that come from? Well, we go back to the Big Bang and something from nothing. So that's creating a real thing out of a lot of real things, really complex real things out of non-existence. That is just a bridge too far for me until I get better information. Someone may be, I'm sure there are many smarter people than me. Maybe someone can tell me, explain it in a way that I would change my mind.
Okay.
Possible.
Okay. So sorry
But
for interjecting.
since that seems unlikely,
Yeah.
this programmed reality seems more likely by comparison.
Yeah. It seems like something from not just something, but everything from nothing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is completely absurd to you.
Yeah, to me,
I mean,
yeah,
I admit, it sounds crazy. I admit.
yeah.
Now, compared to what though is the question. I mean, that's my actual
I
question to you.
mean, compared to our observation of reality.
Okay, but no. We're here. Why is there something rather than nothing? It either came from nothing, everything, or fill in the blank.
Or there was a creator,
No.
then
But everything came from nothing. Or I would say, here's what I'm driving at. I'm just seeing if we're on the same page. Or it has always been here.
oh, okay, yeah, which is another concept that we just don't have the ability to conceive of.
Okay, but you're saying everything from nothing is implausible. But implausible compared to what? It's always compared to something.
Okay, so I would say in your example, I would say, yeah, those seem equally implausible to me. Something to exist eternally with no beginning, no end, seems equally as implausible as something for nothing.
Okay,
So
that seemed to be a core component of your belief or your acceptance, tentative acceptance of simulation theory, which is why I asked, because it seems to be kind of a big deal in your conception of a simulation. That's what I'm trying to get at, the basis of your thought process here. Does that change anything for you? Because both seem to be equally implausible. And yet here we are.
yeah, and yet I lean towards simulation theory.
Yeah.
Is that kind of your question?
Yeah. I mean, like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. My daughters are calling. Hold on. Let me send them let me send them let me take this call real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah.
Daughters, hey, I'm on the phone with your Uncle Dan. Or actually a podcast. I'm on the phone with you. You just accepted that. I told you I was on the phone with Uncle Dan, but I'm actually on the phone with you. Can I call you back? Okay. All right. Talk to you. And that's why I asked, because it's always compared to something, right? I think you and I both agree here that it's always compared to what? Okay,
Yeah.
that's implausible. Well, what's the alternative? Well,
Yeah.
something equally as implausible, at least
Yeah.
equally as implausible. I would argue it's more implausible because we have no evidence of it.
So why not God then?
Why not what? Why not? Why is God not implausible?
I'm pretending that might be your next statement.
Yeah. Well,
Hey,
no,
well,
I'm
if
not.
these
I'm
things
not
are
trying to press that
implausible
issue.
and God is implausible, then why not God instead of these other implausible things?
Well, I could skip to the end because I'm a Christian theist, but that's not really where I'm going with it. I'm just trying to explore the basis of your thought process.
Yeah.
I mean, if something's implausible, I agree it's implausible if there is another better alternative, but it doesn't seem that there is. So therefore, it is equally as plausible or implausible as every other alternative, which just seems to be maybe.
Yeah. Which is to say, I don't know any of these things. I don't know if simulation theory is the way things went down. I don't know if intelligent design. I don't know if the God of the Bible was involved. I don't know any of these things. So this is just a thought experiment. So I want to be clear about that. The simulation theory thing is not a belief of mine. It's a thought experiment that seems interesting, and again, in that little percentage bit of maybe there's something there. So that's the extent to which I have belief in that, which is to say, I would not call it belief. I would call it, it's an interesting theory.
It's a model.
It's a model.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
a
not testable exactly.
Model.
I mean, is it testable? Can you think of any way to test it?
So that seems like it could depend on the developer of the simulation, because they can program, like if you're in a video game, you can't just keep walking one direction forever. You run into the end of the game, don't you?
Are we going into flat Earth theory here, Dan, or is that what we're going?
Oh, yeah, it could be. But the game, inside the game, there are boundaries. There's a universe in the game with boundaries. You can't walk beyond this one spot. It's like I don't see anything in my way. It's just I can't get past it. So, can't remember what that was supposed to be an example of, but
I'm saying, like,
question
is it testable?
Is it testable?
Yeah. How would we know if you're correct that there is that we're in a simulation and the simulation implies a creator, because you don't just get simulations.
Yeah. Simulation definitely implies a creator, which then brings up all the same questions that I would have for you, which is, where'd the creator come from? Is the creator always been there? Who created the creator? Is the creator in our universe or reality, or in a different reality? How many realities are there?
Well, I just kind of, I kind of got ahead of that by saying he's uncaused. So nobody caused my creator.
Yeah.
So right there, that's not scientific, right? That is not scientific. But I don't think we're talking about science here, you or I, because your simulation is not testable, and uncaused is not testable either.
Yes.
Whether from an uncaused Big Bang or an uncaused eternally existent universe. If you can start if we can talk about uncaused entities, then that's indistinguishable from magic and miracle, and we might as well be talking about religion from the beginning.
Yes,
that is.
The only difference is I don't worship the video game creator.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay, so now we're getting to it. Why don't you? What would the video game? Okay, why not? So again, we're getting back to, like, what is it about the simulation? I think you're hinting at it. So
why not worship the video game creator? I think the better question is, why would I worship anyone?
Okay.
Worship is just automatically necessary in any situation that I've seen.
Well, it seems to be, except for the fact that it seems to be, you don't have to. I'm not trying to convince you have to worship.
Sure.
But I would suggest that it does seem to be a universal human inclination throughout time.
Which, again, there have been lots of universal human inclinations that were flat wrong. You mentioned flat Earth here, and
that's not an inclination. That's a theory. I'm talking about an inclination.
Beliefs.
Yeah, but I'm talking beyond belief. I'm talking about, like, a drive, a human drive, as much in some ways as the drive to reproduce, as universal almost as the drive to reproduce. Somehow. I don't understand why.
No, but which thing are you talking about? That's that universal?
The human proclivity to worship.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question. And maybe it's self-serving, because if we feel like someone has the power to make rain fall on our crops so that we don't starve this winter, yeah, I'd be sucking up to them a little bit. I mean, I think what do people pray for? They pray for self-serving stuff a lot, and they pray for good things for other people too. But it's mostly they're, what do we pray for? Oh, I have cancer. I could pray, well, I want to not have cancer. So if there's a chance, even a tiny one, that saying a few words could get rid of my cancer, I'd be all over that. So I think it might even be just as I'm kind of talking through this, it almost seems like it could be kind of a default situation. There are unexplained things everywhere. Why do we get sick? Why do we die? What is gravity? I mean, none of these things we know. And so we start looking for answers. We don't like the unknown. And so we try to plug a placeholder in there for it. So we say, oh, that's not the unknown, that's God. So, and if God is this wonderful, powerful being who would kind of have to be, if we're attributing all this power, the power to bring rain for crops, or the power to raise the dead, or heal a leper, if we're saying, oh, this person has all this power, well, yeah, you're going to suck up to them.
But why make them up? Why make them? I don't understand. How do you get from wanting something to making up a God that can create that? I don't understand. So I mean, I'm not sure we're really on track to your definition of God, the one you're rejecting, or the gods. Like, I want to understand why you reject. Okay, you haven't seen enough evidence, but what's your definition? How would you know if you got enough evidence?
Yeah, so I wouldn't know. I wouldn't trust my own experience. That's what I was talking about earlier with, the hallucinations and all that stuff. How truthful, people who say they've been abducted by UFOs. I don't know what your beliefs are. Personally, I don't believe that has ever happened.
No, nor do I.
Right. So why don't we believe them? Their experience is just as convincing to them as perhaps your experience of God.
Maybe.
Guessing.
Yeah.
Or a Hindu person's experience of their God is just as real as yours is, and yet they're completely different. In fact, maybe they can't both exist at the same time because they're contradictory in some ways. I don't know. But there's plenty of that going around. So if you can say that these other people can't trust their experience of God, well, then I can't trust any experience of God either. Why would I be able to?
So to summarize, let me see if I have this right. To summarize, it sounds like you're saying you don't believe in any God that someone else has presented to you, aka the Christian God, the Muslim God, the Buddhist, not really a God, the Hindu gods, the multiplicity of them, the Roman gods, the Greek gods, for what you know of them. You don't believe in them because you haven't seen enough evidence for them. Furthermore, you would not even trust yourself if you thought you had evidence. You would not believe that you really that they really existed, because you wouldn't trust yourself.
Right there?
Yeah.
On that point. So how could you know, if you had an experience, how could you know that it was a God experience versus some other chemical, emotional experience in your brain? How do you know the difference?
What are we talking about? Like some sense of an aura or something like that? I
haven't asked you yet what your evidence is for God, but
we're just talking about the definition today. We could really we could mushroom this conversation out over days, which we will. That's kind of our intent, but I want to keep this as tightly focused as possible. Yeah,
we'll say that, but but I feel that our perceptions are sufficiently tainted and untrustworthy so as to not be able to trust our own experience or thought or emotion, especially on something, a claim of this magnitude. So the old saying, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So it would have to be a massively convincing thing.
What's the evidence for that, by the way?
For the need for massive evidence?
Yeah, what's the evidence for that claim?
I know you're halfway joking, but
Yeah, I'm halfway joking. I'm just making a point. Like,
yeah,
that's an axiom.
yeah, it's an axiom,
Yeah.
but it holds true in the rest of life.
I mean,
So that's the evidence.
it's a claim. I mean, it's a claim itself is what I'm
So
pointing.
it is a claim,
Yeah.
but we well understand how that works, and we apply that every day. So if I told you I have a white car and you've never seen my car, you might say, "Oh, okay." If I told you I have a white car that can turn into a rocket and go to the moon and back in 30 minutes, that's an extraordinary claim. You're going to dismiss it outright, probably, just because. Now, what evidence could I give you other than taking you on a trip to the moon and back in 30 minutes?
Yeah.
That's the only evidence I could give you. So there's no other kind of evidence that would satisfy you in that situation, would be my bet.
Yeah.
So that's where I am with God. How would I know what kind of, I mean, if
Okay. So why limit it? Okay, I got you. I think we're tracking on this. 100%. We need extraordinary evidence to back up extraordinary claims. So, and I think we're talking about sensory claims or just magnificent, godlike claims. But we haven't really talked about the reasons for why I think all these things, and that's a separate conversation. But are we talking about, so you wouldn't trust yourself? I think we're talking about far more. No Christian that I know banks everything on sensory claims. Do you know what I mean? We're not saying I feel God, therefore God is real. That's not it at all. There are historical claims, there are rational claims and philosophical claims, and as well as experiential claims. Yes, but it's from a in your line of work and mine and healthcare, we don't ever just go with one variable to diagnose and treat someone. That's trouble. You think you're just lunging at a diagnosis in that case. No, we want to, through our own experience, combine different assessments, right? You never just do one test and be like, I know what you got. I mean, you might, but prudence dictates that we take more than one source of evidence in order to make a diagnosis. So we would never just go with sensory evidence or like, I feel this way. That would be foolish. I agree.
So my definition of God is more a definition. It's more a list of exclusions. It's not a definition, because if there's not a God I believe in, I can't define the thing I don't believe in. So,
well, tell me, you don't believe in, okay, I believe in an uncaused God.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just go by my list then. What is it about an uncaused God that makes you not believe in it?
Well, I won't even take issue with that. I'm not saying that I believe that there is an uncaused God, but I mean, if one of the elements of the diagnosis I don't believe in, it kind of throws out the whole definition. Did I say diagnosis?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm trying. I think I understand. Like it's an analogy. I don't take issue with that. Okay, so let's go down. So uncaused is not a problem. Timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. Do you have a problem with that?
Well, I mean, what would be it would just be a question. Why do you believe that God is outside of time and space and immaterial?
It's sort of a subset of uncaused. It's a subset of uncaused.
Okay.
If God is uncaused, then he is necessary, which gets to, it's hard to talk about these things in terms of our human experience. But in fact, there seems to be some uncaused entity, whether the universe itself or the cause of something like the Big Bang, some creation event. So either we have an eternally necessary self-existent universe or an eternally self-existent necessary creator God. So for various reasons that we haven't discussed yet, and nor will I necessarily at this juncture, but I side with the eternally self-existent, uncreated God, the creator of all things. And timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, like if you're not caused, I mean, there are various reasons for that, but that's not really, I mean, timeless, uncaused is timeless. There's nothing to do with time. Spaceless, same thing. Like if you're uncaused, you're not bound by any of these things. And the only thing that I know that's not bound by anything is immaterial. Like you couldn't, like material is bound by physical law. So if we're talking about something that's uncaused, then we're also talking about something that is timeless, spaceless, and realistically immaterial. Otherwise, they would be bound by their own laws. They are not bound by their laws. They are the creator of the laws.
Okay. So is it accurate for me to say that it sounds like you've kind of arrived at this definition because things existing couldn't have happened in a different way? And if you just follow all the things, like you said, it couldn't have been a creator who came into existence after the universe, right? It had to be before if he's the creator, right?
If
So
there is no before, that's the weird thing, is there is no before when we're talking about an uncaused creator or the universe. Like nothing existed. And from my perspective, something may have existed, but again, by Occam's razor, I see no reason to multiply other universes. I really have no idea. Is heaven a different universe? I don't know. I might as well just put it in this one because I really don't know. But let's just say the universe encapsulates literally everything, but God being outside of it, so it can't really encapsulate that. Everything physical, let's just say, of which we're talking, is what I'm calling the universe. But yeah, I would say it's deduction. It's really deduction from what.
okay. So, which is part of my problem with being able to say that I have a belief in the way things came to be, is because as far as I'm concerned, there's zero physical evidence. We don't, by the nature of our existence and our history and our knowledge of ourselves and things around us, we can't go back and research this, or at least it appears we cannot. If we could, it seems like we would have at this point. By this point, if there was a way to get to the bottom of it, here's the thing. And it's it's always possible there's some kind of scientific discovery or something like that. But so the fact that something is not falsifiable, meaning I can't prove that your God doesn't exist, it just makes it a weaker argument. So that by itself makes me say, all right, so I'm not gonna believe unfalsifiable things, if at all possible.
I'm not sure what we're talking about. I haven't made any claims about falsifiability or unfalsifiability, so I'm not sure.
No, I'm saying in order to get an all-powerful, uncaused, outside of time and space, there's no way for me to disprove that.
No, it's not scientific.
No, our current physics don't allow that.
So let's back up. Do you believe that intellect and rationality allows us any tool with which to examine this topic? Because if not, we might as well just stop this podcast right here.
Well, sure, of course, it allows us. We're examining it right now. Now, is our intellect enough to give us an answer? I think absolutely not.
But can we know anything? Like, I think the fact that we're discussing this presumes that we have access to some truth, but via our intellect.
So truth. What is truth? We may,
Facts, the things as they really are.
yeah,
We can arrive at conclusions regarding something as it really is via our intellect alone.
and
We can
how convinced could we be? Well, let me ask you this on that note. How convinced are you that this God exists in the way that you've described him? Would you say 99%, 100%, 80%? What would you say? What's your level of conviction?
Yeah, I would say greater than 2%.
Yeah.
With your simulation. And I would allow realistically based on the way I live, because I believe the way I live actually is more revelatory of what I believe than what I say I believe.
Yeah. But
So
that's all downstream of your beliefs. And I'm saying,
so I would say
but you
90,
have the belief,
I would say 90%.
90%.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a high level of conviction for having, do you have any physical evidence that you would present for existence of this God?
Well, what we're talking about, I mean, the existence of the universe itself is what we're discussing, which
Well,
I
we can
think,
see that.
which makes it more likely than not to me that a creator exists. So an uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful creator exists. That's what I would say.
Okay. And are there any other phenomena that could explain the universe other than an uncaused creator?
Yeah. There were the alternative to, as I see it, would be an uncaused universe, which I think is not tenable.
Yeah. Again, at least based on our understanding of physics.
Right. Yeah. The universe does seem to have had a beginning. The universe does seem to have had a beginning, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's something from nothing. As far as we know, again, I'm no scientist, but I would say, and yet science says the Big Bang is what happened, where something did come from nothing, if I understand it right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a big hurdle for me. And then is the making the jump to this entity that is so far beyond anything that has ever been witnessed, that we can experience, that we can even explain. I just can't jump there without with the current amount of evidence. And just for anyone watching, John, you and I were both raised Christian.
Yeah.
Seventh-day Adventist, which
I
is
call it a cult. It's a Christian cult.
and so we are both of us very familiar with the Bible. You've kept up with it way more than me, because I've been agnostic for 20 years plus, I guess.
Yeah.
But so it's not that I was imagining that someone watching would say, "Oh, well, Dan, your heart is hardened."
you know all the catchphrases. That kind of stuff drove me away. I've talked to you about this. I had my own dalliance as an atheist, and certainly lived as a non-Christian for years and years.
Yeah.
And overtly as an atheist for as long as I could manage, which wasn't a long time.
Yeah. Which is what I did as soon as I moved out of the house. Dropped everything.
Yeah, because I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Because if that was what God was, if that was what Christianity was, count me out.
Yeah.
Count me out. No, thank you. See ya. We'll part ways here.
Yeah.
You got nothing for me.
Which will be in another conversation in our maybe our next conversation. I'll talk about, well, let's assume like this is how I see our next conversation going. It could be I say, okay, I believe in your God. I believe he exists. Now, why should I worship him?
Yeah, and that's kind of where we ended last time.
Yeah.
And we've definitely taken a different track on this conversation. It seems somehow more convoluted in this
It
conversation.
does.
Maybe because we're kind of anticipating and parrying and trying to throw in more contingencies. I'm not really sure. It seems like a different quality of conversation this time. Last time seemed to flow a little bit better, but
Yeah.
I trust because I have faith, Dan, that this conversation is no less productive. And I think that it's been useful. And I don't think that we're going to arrive at a definition of God for you. It doesn't sound like. It sounds like we're arriving at a negation of my definition, although you haven't explicitly negated uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful yet. And that's really all we've gone through.
Well, all I have for those things is where's the extraordinary evidence?
Well, I mean, we were talking about the
And I know you're
origin of
saying
the universe.
yes. And what's the alternative? Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just because we can't think of an alternative doesn't mean one doesn't exist.
That's an appeal to lack of imagination, and
Yes.
I'm not really sure that's admissible as evidence, to be honest. I don't think you would allow me, in my defense of God, to posit something like you just don't have enough imagination, Dan.
I don't like as in
So that's an
my
imagination of the
imagination is
gap.
not strong enough to imagine
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Is that
You
what
just don't. You lack imagination. That's why you don't believe in God.
Well, when it comes to alternatives, that's when this rule is useful because we all know of a false dichotomy, right? It's like, did you do this or did you do that? Or which one is best? Well, they may both be equally terrible, but they've left out other options and made it artificially look like just two choices remain when in fact there are many other options. So when it comes to something as big as the universe and the origin of everything,
What other options are there, Dan? What other options are there? It was uncaused and eternally existent, or it was caused. What other options are there?
Okay. No, that I'll go with.
Okay.
But then as to the nature of the causes, how many options are there
Okay,
there?
but what are you going with? Was it caused or uncaused?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, well, it seems to have had an origin.
Yeah. We know that. Well, what can we know? Actually, I have to be careful when I say that because how many things can we actually know? But if there are things we have to acknowledge there are perhaps most of the things that we cannot know. Our understanding of the world is kind of a working understanding. We assume the sun's going to come up. We assume that water is always going to be good for us, and we assume there's going to be all the things we assume. Because they keep consistently happening over and over. So basically, we have a good track record that, oh yeah, this thing is gravity is probably going to work if I drop my pen because it's worked every other time I've dropped my pen. But when it comes to a creator, we're flying blind, man. We're flying blind. So I acknowledge that either the universe came from something or from nothing. There are not any other alternatives I know of. But that doesn't go very far in convincing me of a God.
I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to find common ground. I'm trying to figure out, like you said, you don't have a definition of God. So what we're doing is we're working backwards from mine. We're finding out what things you object to.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to find out. I'm not trying to pin you. I know. I'm not trying to pin you down.
I know you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
Yes. But all these things, the definitions your definition you gave me. I'll say, let's see, worthy of worship, outside time and space, creator. Creator is such a loose term. I can buy in with that. I think that has to be a possibility, is a creator, as opposed to an accidental creation.
Well, I mean, an accidental creation, I presume you're talking about something created just by chance alone, which Dawkins talks about a ration of luck. which to me, a ration of luck is indistinguishable from like some kind of a miraculous creation. You know what I mean? So if you're going to posit, like Dawkins does, a ration of luck, you might as well, and we haven't really talked about Dawkins. He's my counterpoint here. But if we're going to talk about a ration of luck, I agree. You might as well talk about a creator because they're scientifically indistinguishable.
Okay, yeah, and I can agree with creator as an option,
Okay.
not the only option. All powerful, or you said, more powerful, essentially all powerful as far as we're concerned.
As far as I'm concerned, like, look, don't trouble me with the details. He's powerful than more powerful enough to have created the universe. There's nothing I can do to touch that.
Yeah, yeah. Emotions and feelings. I don't. I mean, I can see where you get where your thought process gets you there, but and certainly the worthy of worship one. Let's see, that and the Christian God of the Bible. Those may be my two. Yeah. Oh, and the source of goodness and morality. Those three things are the things I have the biggest issue with.
Okay.
So someone being outside, independent of our laws of physics, kind of seems like that's probably necessary in most, if not all, of the options for how things came to be. There would have to be someone who has abilities beyond what we understand. That seems, because we can't create universes, and this other entity can, so that seems reasonable. Creator is part of that. Uncaused. Yeah, who knows? There could have been a chain of gods. I mean, like the Greeks, one gives birth to another. I don't know.
But ultimately, that's still uncaused.
Well, if you take it all the way back to the first God, you mean?
There is no first God, so it's uncaused. Even a chain like that.
Well, that's again if they existed forever.
Right, but what I'm saying is, presuming that's what we're talking about, that is still an uncaused first cause. There is no first cause. There is no cause.
I'll accept all of those for the purpose of argument. Outside of time and space, creator, all powerful, uncaused. It's the other three elements that are sticking points for me: the worthy of worship, source of goodness and morality, and the Christian God of the Bible, which I know is another conversation.
Yeah, it's totally another conversation. But it seems like for this conversation, so I've further identified, obviously, I'm a Christian, skip to the end. I happen to think that this God is best represented by the God of the Bible. And defending that God is a question of what's called theodicy. That is not a question of his existence, but of that's an internal question. Does God exist with these attributes? Yes or no? And then furthermore, is this God represented, as I contend, by the God of the Bible? That is an internal question. Once we figure out if this God that I've talked about by his attributes is even plausible, and then we go on to what's his identity. If we can know.
Yeah.
So that eliminates it to two problems then for this conversation, which is the source of objective morality and worthy of worship. And those are very much intertwined, as all these other ones are, really, because if he's the source of goodness, which is the source of morality, the objective standard of goodness and morality and love, then that's the kind of God that I would want to worship. That's what I mean by worthy of worship. So this is really two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. I would be much more inclined to be friends with a God that was nice than one that wasn't.
Yeah, I disagree with the word nice. And nice and kind. So I typically look askance at people trying to split synonyms. I think that usually there's some hidden motive to trying to split synonyms. And I'm not sure that kind and nice don't fit that bill, but hear me out. So for my purposes, when I say kind, good, that's a better one.
Say good.
Because good may not be nice.
Which we find in the Bible.
Yeah. Well, look at is like sometimes like nice varies by who you talk to, right? Because not you can't because nice to everybody, that's something's got to give. Because we got good
So
people and evil
all the
people.
women and children in Jericho didn't
Yeah,
feel like they were being treated very
I
nicely.
bet they didn't. I bet they didn't. And yet, that's part of the theodicy is defending rationally, attempting to defend a God who kills innocent people. And what's that about? That's part of the very big, very compelling problem of evil,
Mhm.
which is what I think we have planned for our next
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah, I think that's the next best one.
Yep.
Yeah. So just to summarize, in a my belief as in a theoretical God, I could get on board with creator, outside of time and space, all powerful essentially, and even uncaused. So those four elements of your definition of God, I'm happy to go along with for the purpose of argument. Even though I'm not, at the same, all these disclaimers we have to give, right? Even though I'm not saying a God exists with those qualities, I'm saying, oh
No,
yeah,
yeah.
seem like reasonable attributes for for a God that a God might have to have, in fact, if a God existed to create everything that they have done.
Yeah, because we have to be able to talk about something when we talk about God. And if you're like, well, I don't know what God means, well, then I'm like, okay, I'm having this
Yeah,
conversation with
we're
myself.
not talking about anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you've left out personality and feelings from God.
yeah. I'm that seems a little more tenuous for me. It's not a big. I, I don't know if. I mean, I know that right before the flood, God said that He regretted His decision to create man. So again, this is according to the Bible, so that's kind of circular evidence there. But that's interesting. I always thought that was interesting that the all-knowing and all-smart knows the future God made a decision he regretted, like he wouldn't know that was going to happen in the beginning.
Or it grieved him, depending on the translation.
Uh,
It grieved him.
so why was he grieved when he knew that was going to happen? We're
Yeah.
getting into another topic.
We're getting into definitely future conversations.
Yeah.
But like, is it plausible that God has feelings and is personally has personality?
I'll give you a God with feelings.
And I'll see your
Sure,
God with feelings, and
have
I'll raise you omniscience.
have your kind, powerful, all-knowing, timeless God.
Okay. All
Don't
right.
mention it was nothing.
So it sounds like common ground, and then we'll close this down because this is waxing long.
Yeah.
Uncaused, timeless, spaceless, immaterial. So far, so good. Powerful, because any being who could create this is powerful, is a creator, and plausibly has feelings and personality. And something we're not so sure about or actively object to is morality, the source of morality.
Yeah.
And along with that goes worship and the God of the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, so it all seems to hinge, correct me if I'm wrong, on that morality question, which does directly lead into the problem of evil.
Yeah, that's as you say that. Yeah, I would say that's probably accurate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I
we've
haven't
made
thought
some
about that way.
progress. We made some progress in spite of our best efforts.
That's right. Yeah, it just reminds me. I know we're about to sign off here, but it reminds me every time I watch a debate between two people, I'm like, oh, we got these two titans. They're going to go head to head. They're going to destroy each other.
Yeah.
And then you see them in the debate, and it's all a bunch of like
Caveats.
deferrals and caveats and context, and it ends up being a big disappointment. But that's the nature of these topics. It
Dan,
just is.
I liked our first conversation better.
I did too. I did. We were too well prepared this time, John. We were
we
too
were
well prepared.
we were on. I didn't prepare it at all.
Okay, well, I didn't either. I think our only preparation was the talk last week.
Yeah, and so we were
And then
like,
we're like,
"Oh,
ooh, I
that
got to get this one in there.
I didn't like how that went." Blah blah. I thought it was very smooth last time.
I did too. I
It
did.
was a little bit. It was a little bit. Um, it was a little like tedious, a little bit. No,
Yeah.
but it's okay. I think it was still very productive.
Yeah.
I hope you feel the same way because I think that we, without question, identified some things that we can agree about when we talk about God. Like, who do we mean when we talk about God? We furthermore figured out what attribute that I assert about God you have trouble accepting.
Yeah.
And it leads directly, as we anticipated, into our pre-planned next conversation anyway. Question about morality, specifically the question of evil.
Evil. Yeah, I think that's a perfect next step. And one last thing I'll say, if between now and next week or whenever we do the next round of this, if something pops into your head or mind, we can add a little, ooh, this should have gone on the last one. We can bring it up
Sure.
as long as we can be trusted to keep it short.
Yeah, of course.
Go over the whole conversation.
Okay, fair.
Well, cool, man.
I have nothing to add. I have nothing. Well, I'm glad. I'm recording this. You're recording this. Between the two of us, you're not recording. Okay, well, it's on me.
On you.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope this is actually recording. I appreciate the conversation, Dan. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
You didn't cough, Dan. Are you feeling better?
Ooh, that's right. I think honestly, you're right. I didn't cough. That is conspicuous. That's the dog that wasn't barking, the dog that wasn't coughing.
Yeah.
So I think this doxy, this was my theory. I think I told you. So I get this rash from the chemo.
Mm-hmm.
They give me the doxy to clear up the skin rash, and I was
doxycycline is an antibiotic widely used in the Army for everything.
And I was like, the lining of my gut is skin as well. This is skin. I wonder if the chemo irritated the skin on the outside of me and in my belly as well, because that's where I have a lot of trouble. And I was like, oh, I hope it is, because then if this rash clears up, maybe the belly will get better too. And it appears that is what's happening. It appears.
Well, you haven't coughed much at all this conversation. So to whatever we attribute that, it seems like an improvement, Dan. And just frankly speaking, I told you this before, and I told my friends who are praying for you, for what that's worth to you, which I think is quite a lot. But
the world.
I told them that I put a date on it, and they rebuked me for it. I said, I think Dan's going to be dead in January, the first half of January. I think he's gonna be in the hospital, and I think he's gonna be dead the first half of January. They're like, don't limit God. And I was like, listen, that's how we know if it's a miracle or not, okay? Because the way I saw you at the end of November,
yeah,
you were abject, man, and I was crushed. And yet here you are, better than you were then by a far piece. So to whatever we attribute that, and I will attribute it to my God. And I think that God absolutely works through human beings. So it's not like he's just doing things in the ethers. He applies himself through physical matter and energy. So at any rate, I'm so glad you're feeling better.
Thanks, John. And I honestly, I of course at various points have felt the same. Like this feels like it's kind of feels like I'm on a glide path here.
Yeah.
Feels like I'm approaching my final destination. It just feels like that sometimes. Sometimes you just feel like you're dying.
And you might be.
And
we don't neither of us know. But I will say this, trending, which is what I do a lot in my line of work, and you do as well, are you getting better, worse, or staying the same? And what would you say to that? Better. I can't tell what slope right or left.
Yeah. Well, I'm used. Is this up and to the right for you?
Yeah, it is for me.
Yeah. I'm used to talking about trends with patients who sit across from me.
Yeah,
so I reverse it. But so it looks like it's correct to you. But yeah, up and to the right. And the trend The trend has lots of noise,
Sure.
but if you zoom out and look at like a month,
It's very
I'm
smooth.
better now than I was a month ago. So that's what I'm running with.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell the boys.
Yeah. And please pass my thanks along to all of your friends and your church family for all their prayers. I can't thank you and them enough. It
And
means
the,
it
and the
means the world.
Durbans, you know, and like too many to list. Too many to list.
Thank you, John. Love you, brother.
Love you too, Dan. Thanks for the combo. We'll see you
Yeah.
next week. Next week.
Yeah. Let's do the next one. So the next one is the problem with evil or the question of evil.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And I think prayer would be another topic that might be standalone.
Sure.
Okay. We can figure all that out.
Yeah.
All right, John, have a great afternoon, great week ahead.
You too, brother Dan. Love you.
Love you too, John. Bye-bye.